So I want you to imagine for a second that you've got this salesman, right? And you are paying him $10,000 an hour.
Which is, I mean, a pretty wild salary to begin with.
Right. But instead of actually selling your product to your clients, this guy just walks into the boardroom, puts on a full clown suit, and does a tap dance.
Just a full-on performance.
Yeah, exactly. He just entertains the room, maybe gets a few laughs, and then leaves without asking for a single dime.
Yeah.
I mean, you would fire him up on the spot, wouldn't you?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, security would be called immediately.
But the crazy thing is, when we shift from that physical boardroom to the internet, businesses are spending millions of dollars doing exactly that.
They really are. They're basically buying applause instead of, actually asking for the sale.
Yeah, they hire these massive agencies to make them look clever or to make people laugh or to win awards for creativity.
Right.
All while completely ignoring whether or not any of that actually moves the needle on their revenue.
Which is so wild when you think about it. It sounds absurd when you visualize the clown in the boardroom, but that exact dynamic is playing out in marketing budgets everywhere today.
It really is.
It's honestly the single most expensive blind spot in modern commerce, and I think it stems from this fundamental identity crisis.
Like people forgot what they're actually doing.
Exactly. People have somehow forgotten what advertising actually is. Like over the last few decades, it's been treated as a branch of the entertainment industry.
Or like some abstract art project.
Right. Or worse, just a vehicle for corporate ego. The disconnect between the fundamental mechanics of selling and the actual ads being produced today is just staggering.
Which is why today, in this deep dive, we are stripping all of that away. We're tearing down this whole black art mentality of marketing.
Yes, all the guesswork and the obsession with vanity metrics.
Exactly. The creative ego trips, all of it. And we're replacing it with pure, predictable, unforgiving science.
I love that phrasing, unforgiving science.
And to do that, we're looking at a source that is, frankly, the holy text of direct response marketing. It's called Scientific Advertising by Claude Hopkins.
Such a legendary book.
It is. But you know what the absolute craziest part about this is? This book was published over 80 years ago.
Yeah, which in an industry that prides itself on being cutting edge, where the algorithms literally change every Tuesday, the idea of studying an 80-year-old text seems completely counterintuitive.
You would assume it's completely obsolete.
You really would. I mean, you'd think a guy writing in the era of 2-cent postage stamps and horse-drawn carriages would have absolutely nothing of value to say to a modern marketer.
Right, someone dealing with TikTok feeds and programmatic ads and AI-generated content.
Exactly. But the wisdom inside this little book is so deeply rooted in the foundational, unchanging realities of human psychology.
It really makes modern college marketing textbooks look kind of childish in comparison.
It forces you to look past the medium,
Yeah.
Like forget the screen or the newspaper and focus entirely on the human brain receiving the message.
Which hasn't changed in 80 years.
Not even a little bit. And to really grasp why this book hits with such authority, you have to understand who Claude Hopkins actually was.
Yeah, give us a bit of background on him, because he wasn't just some dusty academic, right?
No, not at all. He didn't sit in an ivory tower theorizing about consumer behavior. He was a ruthless practitioner.
He was in the trenches.
Very much so. Working primarily through the legendary Lord and Thomas Agency, Hopkins was essentially the founding father of modern marketing science. He didn't just write about these concepts, he lived them every single day.
And he tracked everything. Right?
Every single penny. He tracked his clients' money to see exactly what brought a return. He basically invented the whole concept of test marketing.
And he popularized using coupons to track ad performance, which was revolutionary at the time.
Oh, completely. And, he also invented preemptive positioning.
Oh, wait, I want to pause on that. Preemptive positioning.
Huh.
Because it's such a brilliant concept that still dominates today, even if, people don't know the actual name for it.
It really is a perfect example of his genius. The defining story for this is what he did for Schlitz beer.
Oh, I love this story.
It's so good. So at the time, Schlitz was really struggling. They were ranking around 5th in the market.
Which is not great for a national brand.
Not at all. And every single beer company was running these ads just screaming about how pure their beer was.
Just the word pure over and over again.
Yeah, pure was just a buzzword. It was total white noise to the consumer.
So what did Hopkins do?
Well, he went to the Schlitz brewery, and he insisted on seeing the entire process from start to finish. He saw these plate glass rooms where beer was dripping over pipes in specially filtered air.
Wow, that's intense.
Right, and he saw them cleaning every single pump and pipe twice a day. He saw them sterilizing every single bottle with live steam.
Just massive attention to detail.
Exactly, and he saw these deep artesian wells they had dug to get the absolute cleanest water possible. So he was blown away by all this.
Naturally.
And he asked the ownership, he's like, why on earth don't you tell people you do this?
And I can guess what their response was. It was probably something like, well, because every brewery does this.
That was their exact response. They literally said, it's standard industry practice. Our competitors clean their bottles with steam too.
That is so classic.
Right. But Hopkins realized this profound psychological truth in that moment. It doesn't matter if everyone does it. The first person to actually tell the public about it owns it.
Oh, that gives me chills. The first person to tell the public owns the concept.
Exactly. By preemptively claiming that rigorous sterilization process in their ads, Schlitz anchored the standard of purity in the consumer's mind.
So if a competitor came out later and said, hey, wait, we use live steam too.
They just looked like they were copying Schlitz. It looked like they were playing catch-up.
That is brilliant. And what happened to their sales?
Within months, Schlitz went from 5th place to a tie for 1st.
Just from explaining the process? They didn't even change the beer.
They didn't change the product at all. They just changed how the public perceived the value of the product by explaining the how.
And I think that's exactly why Hopkins matters so much right now. Because today, a business will launch a massive social media campaign, right?
Oh, yeah.
And the dashboard says they got 2 million views and 50,000 likes. And the marketing team is popping champagne.
High-fiving each other in the office.
Exactly. But then the sales team is sitting there looking at flat revenue. It hasn't budged.
Because vanity metrics trick us into thinking we're doing good business.
Right. And Hopkins brings us violently back to reality here. Applause does not pay payroll.
It really doesn't.
The only metric that actually matters, the only reason you should ever spend $1 on advertising, is to make a sale at a profit.
And that brings us right to the spine of the entire book. The central thesis that every single rule, tactic, and warning Hopkins gives is built upon.
Lay on us.
He states it with zero ambiguity. He says advertising is not meant to be an art form. It is not meant to entertain. Advertising is simply multiplied salesmanship.
Multiplied salesmanship. It's such a clarifying lens, isn't it?
It changes everything about how you approach copy.
Because the rule becomes really simple. If a salesman standing face-to-face with a living, breathing customer would not say it,
then it has absolutely no business being in print.
Or on a screen or in a video. It sounds like common sense, but the moment people sit down at a keyboard to write an ad or a promotional email, something bizarre happens to them.
It's like they abandon their normal conversational persona entirely.
Yes. They put on this weird performer's hat. They try to be witty or poetic, or they use this bizarre corporate jargon that literally no human being has ever spoken out loud.
Oh, the corporate jargon is the worst, leveraging synergistic paradigms.
I have to admit, I do this all the time. I'll draft an email pitch, and then I'll read it back out loud, and I just cringe.
Because you sound like a robot.
I sound like a 19th century carnival barker mixed with a tech bro robot. It's awful.
That is a terrifying combination.
But think about it. If I actually walked up to a client in a coffee shop, looked them dead in the eye, shouted a clever slogan about synergistic paradigms, and then just stood there waiting for them to laugh.
They would think you were having a medical emergency.
They really would. And they would certainly never give me their money.
No, they'd slowly back away. And Hopkins recognized that when a salesman is too smooth, or too overly polished, or too focused on his own cleverness, the buyer's internal alarm bells go off.
You start wondering what the catch is.
Exactly. We have this evolutionary aversion to being manipulated by charm. Think about the most effective salespeople you know. They are rarely the slickest orators.
That's true. They're usually pretty earnest, plain-spoken people.
Right. People who deeply understand the customer's problem and deeply understand how their product solves it. Your advertising needs to adopt that exact same earnest, serious posture.
But let me push back a little here. Hopkins was writing in an era where people read the newspaper by the fireplace, right? They had time.
That's the common argument, yeah.
Today, we are dealing with a totally different ecosystem. My thumb is scrolling past 500 videos a minute on social media.
Oh.
The competition for attention is just brutal.
It is a totally different environment visually.
Right, so don't I need the clown suit? Don't I need the clever joke or the wild entertainment factor just to make someone stop scrolling long enough to realize I have a product?
That is the ultimate defense of modern entertainment-based advertising, isn't it? We have to hook them first.
Exactly. Get eyes on the brand.
But let's break down the psychology of that for a second. If you use a clown to get their attention, you have successfully attracted an audience of people who like clowns.
Let's see, yeah.
You have not attracted an audience of people who want to buy your accounting software or your heavy-duty drill or whatever it is you're actually selling.
You've paid for useless attention.
Precisely. So the argument is that by entertaining them, you're actually filtering for the wrong demographic. If someone is genuinely in the market for what you sell, they don't want a joker. They want a reliable guide.
That makes so much sense.
Hopkins addresses this directly when he dismantles the myth of brevity. Even back then, 80 years ago, copywriters were saying, keep it short, people don't read.
People have been saying that forever.
Forever. And Hopkins countered it by saying, imagine a prospect walks into your physical store and asks you about your product. Would you artificially limit your words?
Would you say, sorry, I can only give you one sentence because of your attention span?
Of course not. You would give them all the details they need to make an informed decision.
He illustrates this beautifully with the Marmon car example in the book.
Oh, that's a great example. Walk us through that one.
So buying a car in the 1920s was a massive, life-altering investment. Honestly, it still is today.
It's a huge purchase.
But Hopkins points out that a man buying a car will read entire columns, even small books about it, if he is genuinely interested in making the right choice.
Because he's agonizing over the details. His hard-earned money is on the line.
Exactly. The anxiety of making a bad purchase forces the buyer to seek out thorough information.
He wants to feel safe in his choice.
Right. So the Marmon car ads gave the full story. They provided the engineering details, the comfort, the specific mechanical advantages.
They treated the buyer like an adult making a serious decision.
While meanwhile, you had competitors, other luxury cars, who just ran ads that briefly cried out a name like Rolls-Royce or Pierce Arrow.
Maybe featuring a beautiful illustration and a short poetic sentence about luxury.
Yeah. And Hopkins argued that just crying a name leaves a hungry, anxious buyer with absolutely zero actual information.
It just gives them an aesthetic.
Right, so the guy who ended up buying the Marmon read all about it and felt secure in his choice. But he later found out facts about a competing car that cost 3 times as much.
And what did he say?
He said if those facts had been in the competitor's ad, he would have bought the more expensive car.
Wow.
That competitor's desire to be brief and punchy literally cost them a massive high-ticket sale.
And the modern equivalent is happening constantly today. Just think about B2B software websites.
Oh, they are the worst offenders.
You go to a landing page for a SaaS product that costs, say, $50,000 a year. You are a corporate buyer. Your job is literally on the line if you pick the wrong software.
You are desperate for details.
You are desperate to know if it integrates with your current tech stack, what the onboarding is like, what the security protocols are.
And what does the website give you?
A vague, clever headline like, unleash your team's potential.
And a sleek little animation of a rocket ship.
Yes. And a button that says, book a demo. They give you zero information because they're afraid of being too wordy. They are treating a high-stakes corporate buyer like a distracted teenager.
It's infuriating as a consumer. If I have a leaky roof and I rush to the hardware store for a drill, I don't want the clerk to do 5 minutes of stand-up comedy.
No, you're stressed out.
And I don't want him to just look at me and say, unleash your roof's potential. I want to know if the drill goes through concrete, how long the battery lasts, and what the warranty is.
Just give me the facts so I can solve my problem.
Exactly. So the practical takeaway for you, the listener, is to really audit your own output. Stop trying to win applause. Seek sales.
The next time you write an email, a pitch, a YouTube script, or a social media post, read it out loud.
Ask yourself, would this actually help me close the deal if I was sitting across from the buyer in a coffee shop?
And if the answer is no, just delete it. Start over.
Okay, so if we aren't entertaining and we are acting like earnest, serious salespeople providing the full story, what is the actual angle of our pitch?
How do we start the conversation?
Right, how do we approach the customer without just sounding like we are begging for their money?
That is the pivot point where most businesses fail. And Hopkins lays out a framework here that is brutally honest about human nature.
He pulls no punches.
None. He says people care absolutely nothing about your profits.
Or your milestones.
They do not care about your company's anniversary or your revenue goals or how hard you worked on the product. Humans are inherently self-interested. They only care about themselves and their own problems.
It's funny how obvious that sounds when you say it out loud, but you look at modern advertising, and it's full of companies saying, help us reach our goal of 10,000 subscribers.
Or, buy our new soup. Our team worked so hard on it this year.
Nobody wakes up in the morning and thinks, man, I really hope that massive corporation hits their Q3 revenue targets today. Let me go buy their soap to help them out.
It creates immediate resistance in the buyer. It's a selfish appeal. You are asking the consumer to do you a favor.
Which is backwards.
Completely backwards. Hopkins realized that the most profitable ads, the ones that convert at a massive scale, often don't even ask people to buy it first.
They base their entire approach on offering a service.
Exactly. You have to appeal entirely to the buyer's selfishness.
The door-to-door brush salesman story in the book perfectly encapsulates this. I love this example.
Walk us through what the brush maker did.
So this brush maker had a literal army of 2,000 canvassers going door to door. Now, knocking on a stranger's door to sell brushes sounds like an absolute nightmare scenario to me.
It is the hardest sales job in the world.
If those guys knocked and opened the conversation with, hello, please buy my brush, I need to make a living, they would have had doors slammed in their faces all day long.
Because that opening demands the homeowner take on a burden. It asks them to part with their money for an unproven commodity.
So the owner changes the entire script. He tells his canvassers to never, ever ask for a sale at the door.
Which sounds crazy for a salesman.
Right. Instead, they knock, the door opens, and they say, I was sent here to give you a brush. I have some samples here. Please take your choice.
Let's dissect the psychology of what happens in that doorway for a second. The homeowner's natural defense mechanism is instantly lowered.
She isn't put on the defensive by a pushy salesman.
Exactly. She is being offered a gift. She is all smiles. But in the process of looking through the catalog or the sample case to choose her free brush, what happens?
She sees 3 or 4 other highly specialized brushes that she genuinely needs for different tasks around the house.
Yep. And on top of that, you have the psychological law of reciprocity kicking in.
Right. Someone gives you something for free,
Yeah.
and your brain creates this low-level anxiety that you owe them something in return.
You feel a really strong urge to reciprocate the kindness.
Exactly. The salesman offered a genuine service first. He disarmed the buyer, established goodwill, and the natural unforced result is an order for several brushes.
Hopkins recognized that you cannot force people to buy, but you can lead them to buy by serving them first.
He gives another wild example with an electric sewing machine motor.
Oh, the conversion rate on this one is insane.
It really is. So the company was struggling to sell this motor through traditional advertising that just listed the price and said, buy this motor. They were hitting a massive wall.
People just wouldn't pull the trigger.
So they completely stopped asking people to buy it. They changed the ad to say, let us help you for a week without cost or obligation.
They offered to send the motor to any home for a week's free use.
And they even sent a person along to show the customer exactly how to operate it on their own sewing machine.
And the conversion rate on those free trials was just staggering.
9 out of 10 people ended up buying the motor.
A 90% conversion rate, just by changing the underlying request from buy my stuff to let me serve you for free.
The mechanism at play here is the complete removal of risk, isn't it?
Yes, exactly. When you yell buy my brand, you are asking the customer to take a blind risk on you. You are asking them to part with their hard-earned money before they are certain the product will actually solve their problem.
Which is a huge mental hurdle.
But when you offer a service, whether that's a free trial, a sample, a free consultation, or even just genuinely useful information, you are taking the financial and emotional risk upon yourself.
You are telling the market, I am so confident this will improve your life, I'll let you prove it to yourself at my expense.
And it makes the offer nearly impossible to resist.
So for you listening to this requires a ruthless audit of your own requests. Look at your landing pages, your call to actions, your daily emails.
Are you fundamentally asking your customer to do you a favor?
Right. Or are you genuinely offering to solve their problem at zero risk to them? Because if you can shift the burden of risk off the buyer and onto yourself, your conversion rates will explode.
But here's the catch. Offering a great risk-free service is only half the battle. People still have to believe that your product can actually do what you claim it can do.
And in the world of advertising, the baseline consumer mindset is deep, deep skepticism.
People naturally assume marketers are prone to exaggeration, if not outright lying.
Which brings us to perhaps the most actionable, immediate upgrade anyone can make to their communication. Hopkins calls for the absolute destruction of platitudes and generalities.
I love how he voices this.
He writes that generalities roll off the human understanding like water off a duck's back.
Because they lack substance.
Yeah.
When an ad says, "We have the best quality in the world," or "the lowest prices in existence," your brain doesn't just ignore it. It actively discounts it.
Hopkins calls this claiming the expected.
Right. If every single coffee shop in town claims to have the best coffee in town, the phrase loses all meaning. It becomes invisible.
Furthermore, using those superlatives actually damages your credibility. It suggests you are lazy and prone to loose, exaggerated talk.
You trigger the consumer's internal scam detector.
So how do we bypass that scam detector?
Well, Hopkins realized that while people naturally distrust adjectives, they have a profound, almost subconscious respect for exact numbers.
Yes. He points out that a man who makes a highly specific numerical claim is either telling the absolute truth or he is telling a flat-out measurable lie.
And psychologically, people do not expect a legitimate business to blatantly lie about specific data in print.
They assume there are legal consequences or basic industry standards keeping them honest.
So when you state an exact figure, you command respect. The shaving soap story he shares is a masterclass in this.
Oh, walk us through the shaving soap.
So for years, the shaving soap market was incredibly crowded, and every brand was shouting the exact same generalities. Abundant lather, doesn't dry on the face, acts quickly.
Total white noise.
Exactly. It was all white noise to the consumer. Then a new maker enters this difficult market, and historically, we know this was Palmolive.
Okay, so what did Palmolive do differently?
Hopkins didn't write ads calling it the best soap. He used brutal specificity. He gave them the math.
The ad stated that the soap softens the beard in 1 minute.
Not quickly, but in exactly 1 minute.
He stated that it maintains its creamy fullness for 10 minutes on the face.
And most powerfully, he claimed that this specific formulation was the final result of testing and comparing 130 formulas.
See, that is so brilliant because it implies a massive amount of behind-the-scenes scientific rigor.
It really does. Saying we tried a lot of formulas sounds like marketing fluff.
But saying we tested 130 formulas sounds like guys in white lab coats meticulously tracking data until they achieved perfection.
It creates a vivid mental image of the labor that went into the product, which inherently increases its perceived value.
Hopkins used this exact same psychological lever with the clothing dealer, didn't he?
He did. In this particular town, every single clothing storefront had massive signs screaming, "Lowest prices," or "Huge blowout sale."
Which, again, is claiming the expected. It's completely meaningless.
So Hopkins advised one dealer to take down all those generic signs and replace them with a simple, definite statement.
And what was it?
Our net profit is 3%.
Wow. That completely changes the paradigm of the conversation.
It does. It shifts the argument from a subjective claim about low prices to an objective fact about business operations.
The buyer walks past, reads that sign, and immediately deduces, well, no retail business can possibly survive making less than a 3% margin, so their prices simply must be the lowest possible.
It is infinitely more persuasive than screaming lowest prices because it invites the consumer to do the math and arrive at the conclusion themselves.
It's exactly like reading a resume. Think about it. If you are a hiring manager and you get a resume where the candidate writes, "I am a very hard worker, a self-starter, and a great team player,"
Your eyes just glaze over.
you don't believe them, not because you think they're lying, but because literally everyone writes that. But if that same candidate writes, "I increased my division's outbound sales by 34% in 6 months by implementing a new automated CRM system,"
You sit up straight in your chair, you want to hire that person immediately.
because the specificity proves the claim.
Or take the safety razor company that didn't just advertise a quick shave, but explicitly advertised a 78-second shave.
It implies that actual stopwatch tests were conducted. It grounds the claim in reality.
So the mandate for you listening is clear. Ruthlessly edit your own copy. Go through your website, your pitch deck, your bio, and erase every single superlative.
Delete the words best, greatest, fastest, highest quality, world-class. They are actively hurting you.
If a claim is actually worth making, attach a specific, proven number to it. Don't say we save you time. Say we cut your payroll processing time by 42 minutes a day.
But here is the dangerous part of being that specific. If you write an ad detailing the exact 78-second shaving process or the exact 42 minutes of payroll processing saved, you have just made your ad incredibly boring to about 99% of the general population.
Which sounds like a terrible idea if you were paying for the ad space.
Yeah, to a modern marketer obsessed with reach and impressions, it sounds terrible.
But to Hopkins, making your ad boring to 99% of the population is exactly what you want, provided that the 1% who are fascinated by it are your actual buyers.
And that brings us to how you capture that 1%. The headline. Hopkins operates on what we can call the Hey Bill Jones principle.
I love this principle so much.
He says the purpose of a headline is absolutely not to get everyone to look at your ad.
Which is a tough pill to swallow today when every creator and brand wants maximum eyeballs and viral reach.
But maximum reach is a massive liability if you are paying to reach the wrong people.
Hopkins uses a very simple analogy. Imagine you are at a massive, crowded convention and you urgently need to deliver a message to a specific man named Bill Jones.
Okay.
You don't stand on a table, juggle flaming torches, and tell a captivating story to get the entire room's attention, just so you can quietly ask if Bill Jones is in the crowd.
That's a total waste of energy.
You simply cup your hands and yell, "Hey there, Bill Jones!" The room ignores you, which is fine, because the only person who turns around is Bill Jones.
The headline has to act as a ruthless filter.
Exactly. Hopkins asks us to look at how people actually read a newspaper. Nobody reads the paper cover to cover, reading every single article.
Right. They scan.
They quickly assess the financial page, the sports scores, the local news. The headline is the only thing that reveals or conceals the reader's interest.
He points out that if a newspaper ran an article about the most beautiful woman in the city, that woman and all of her friends would be intensely interested in reading every word of it.
But they would never even glance at the article if the editor gave it the headline, Egyptian Psychology.
Even if the content was identical, the filter was wrong.
He talks about how this applies to something as mundane as soap. If you are selling a specialty facial soap and your headline is Keep Clean, it might attract a tiny percentage of people.
But mostly it's just too commonplace. Everyone wants to keep clean. It's boring.
Right. And if you write no animal fat, maybe a few health-conscious people stop, but it's still pretty dry.
But if your headline focuses specifically on beauty or clear complexion,
suddenly you multiply your returns massively. You aren't catching everyone, but you are perfectly filtering for people who deeply desire to improve how they look.
this logic completely dismantles the modern obsession with clickbait, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Clickbait, the you won't believe what happens next style of headline is engineered to trick every single person into clicking, regardless of their actual interests.
Right, the curiosity gap.
The curiosity gap. But Hopkins would look at a modern clickbait campaign and call it a catastrophic failure of economics.
Why? Because clickbait attracts the masses, but it repels the actual buyer.
Yes. If you use a vague, sensational headline to trick 1 million people into clicking your ad for B2B accounting software, and none of them are CFOs or accountants,
You have just wasted a fortune on server costs, ad spend, and retargeting pixels.
you've paid for useless attention. Hopkins says attracting non-buyers is a total waste of money. You are not writing to please the masses. You are writing to summon your ideal prospect.
So if you are writing a subject line for a cold email, or the title of a YouTube video, or a hook for a social post, do not write to the crowd.
Write your hook to act as a laser-targeted filter.
You only want to stop the scrolling thumb of the person who actually has the problem you solve. Let everyone else keep scrolling. Their attention is expensive and useless to you.
Yes, let them scroll. Reserve your specific facts and your risk-free service for the people who are actually ready to be convinced.
Okay, let's assume we've done all this perfectly. We've written a laser-targeted headline that calls out Bill Jones. We're offering a risk-free service that triggers reciprocity.
We are using brutal numerical specificity to prove our claims instead of empty platitudes.
Right. We have built the perfect scientifically sound pitch. We just launch it, scale the budget, and count the money, right?
Not even close. According to Hopkins, all of that preparation is just forming a hypothesis.
Just a hypothesis.
Yep. No matter how smart you think your ad is, no matter how perfectly it adheres to psychological principles, you still have to subject your ego to the ultimate unforgiving court of law: the data.
Because Hopkins believed that advertising without testing was just a blind gamble.
He was famously obsessed with mail-order advertising for this exact reason. He called it the severest test of an advertising man.
Why mail orders specifically?
Because there is nowhere to hide in mail order. In general, advertising like putting up a billboard on the highway or running a vague TV commercial agencies can make endless excuses.
Oh, sales didn't go up. Well, it's a branding play. We are building long-term top-of-mind awareness.
Exactly. It's untrackable, which means the marketer never has to admit they were wrong. But in mail order, every single penny is tracked through coupon codes or specific return addresses.
You know exactly how much it costs to acquire a single reply.
A bad guess is immediately exposed by the math. He gives a staggering example of this in the book.
Right, the $5 product. Tell that story.
So there was a man selling a $5 product by mail. He ran his ad, tracked the coupon replies, and found that every single reply cost him exactly 85 cents in advertising spend.
Which is very profitable for a $5 item.
Extremely profitable. But then another man, presumably some creative copywriter, submitted a new ad that he genuinely believed was better. He thought it was more clever, more beautifully written.
So they ran the new ad.
They ran the new ad. The replies cost $14.20 each.
Oh my God. $14.20 to sell a $5 product.
That isn't just a slight dip in performance. That is the difference between a massively profitable empire and filing for bankruptcy.
And if that second man had been running a general, untrackable billboard campaign,
He would have just kept running that $14 ad.
he would have been blissfully unaware that he was paying sometimes 35 times more for a customer than he needed to, simply because he thought his clever ad was better.
To prevent this kind of disaster, Hopkins formalized the test campaign. Long before we had digital A/B testing dashboards, Hopkins was doing it manually.
Before he would allow a client to roll out a massive national campaign, he insisted on testing it in 4 or 5 carefully selected, average towns.
He would run the ads locally, use coupons to track the exact number of replies, and calculate the cost per acquisition.
There is a terrifying story he tells about a food advertiser regarding this.
Oh, the product change.
Yes. This business owner and his entire board of directors were absolutely convinced that his product would be significantly more popular if he completely changed its physical form.
They had meetings, they looked at the market, and they were just certain of it.
They were ready to pull the trigger on a massive, highly expensive national rollout of this new product form.
But Hopkins convinced them to do a micro-test first.
Right. They inserted an ad in just a few local towns offering a coupon for a package of this new style product. People brought the coupons in, and they bought it.
So far, so good.
But Hopkins didn't stop there. He actually followed up. He wrote letters to the users who bought the new form to get their direct feedback.
And what did they say?
The users were almost unanimous in their disapproval. They hated the new form. That little local test probably cost the company a few hundred, maybe $1,000.
Yeah.
But it saved them from a catastrophic, multi-million-dollar national launch that would have permanently alienated their existing customer base.
It probably would have destroyed the company.
It definitely would have. Now, I hear what Hopkins is saying, but let me play devil's advocate. If I'm a startup founder today, speed is everything.
Move fast and break things.
Exactly.
Yeah.
If I spend weeks running micro-tests in different geographic regions or obsessively A/B testing the copy on every single email, I might miss my window to market. Sometimes you are the visionary founder, you see the future, and you just have to trust your gut.
That is the eternal battle cry of the visionary founder. But Hopkins would pause and ask you, whose gut are we actually talking about? Yours or the buyer's?
Ouch.
Because the history of business is essentially a massive graveyard of brilliant visionary founders who trusted their own guts, bet the farm, and went bankrupt because the buyer's gut felt differently.
That's a sobering thought.
Hopkins views testing not as a bureaucratic roadblock that slows you down, but as the ultimate risk mitigator. He says that testing turns a 100-to-1 shot into a completely safe, conservative business venture.
You let the thousands decide what the millions will do.
Let the thousands decide what the millions will do. That is a principle you can build a whole career on.
Now, obviously, the audience listening to this knows what A/B testing is. We all have software that can test button colors or email subject lines in seconds.
But the trap is that modern marketers test trivial things.
Right. Hopkins wasn't testing whether a red button converted better than a blue button.
No, he was testing fundamental psychological offers. He was testing whether a free trial beat a discount. He was testing whether a headline appealing to beauty beat a headline appealing to health.
He was using the scientific method to map the human psyche, not just to optimize a web page layout.
Exactly. So the takeaway is to never scale an untested assumption, especially regarding your core offer. Find a way to run a low-stakes micro-test before going all in.
Pitch the new angle to a small segment of your email list.
Run $50 in highly targeted ads just to see which core emotional hook gets clicks. Let the data tell you what the market actually wants, not what your ego thinks they should want.
Is so powerful. But even with rigorous testing, Hopkins warns that there are certain walls you should never try to knock down no matter how much venture capital funding you have.
He lays out what we can call the two costly traps.
These are the black holes of marketing, and the very first and most dangerous trap is attempting to change a widespread human habit.
Hopkins states categorically that changing people's habits is simply too expensive for any single business to undertake.
He shares this crazy example of trying to sell shaving soap to Russian peasants.
Oh, right, because at that time, the vast majority of them wore full beards.
Exactly. If you want to sell them your shaving soap, you first have to spend millions of dollars educating them on why they should shave their beards off, changing deep cultural norms before you can even begin to pitch your specific brand of soap.
Which is financially impossible.
Or consider the dentifrice maker toothpaste. Hopkins noted that a maker might look at the massive population of people who don't brush their teeth and see a huge untapped market.
They might spend a fortune trying to educate those non-brushers on the health benefits of dental hygiene.
But Hopkins' testing showed that creating a brand new convert to the toothbrushing habit cost something like $25 a person in advertising spend.
Wait, if converting a non-brusher costs $25 a head and a tube of toothpaste costs pennies, that's financial suicide.
Exactly. He must have realized the only way to survive was to cannibalize his competitors' customers.
That is precisely what he realized. The successful toothpaste maker completely ignored the people who didn't brush. He didn't devote a single line of his advertising copy to educating people on the habit of brushing.
He only advertised to the people who were already standing at the sink.
Yes, people already brushing their teeth, and he focused entirely on convincing them why his specific paste was better than the one they were currently using.
He rode an existing wave of desire. He didn't try to manufacture the ocean.
That is a profound lesson for tech startups today. Think about how many software companies burn through their runway trying to force consumers to adopt a brand new behavior.
Instead of just offering a faster, cheaper, or better solution for a behavior the market is already doing anyway.
It's the arrogance of thinking your marketing budget can overcome entrenched human nature.
So true. Now, the other massive, too costly trap Hopkins identifies is the use of negative advertising.
He calls it the lugubrious blue.
Which is such an amazing, archaic phrase, I had to look it up. Lugubrious basically means looking or sounding sad, dismal, or gloomy.
Right. It's the tendency of marketers to think that the best way to agitate a customer's pain point is to show them a depressing picture of someone suffering from that pain.
Hopkins says never use negative advertising.
Never focus on the dark, gloomy side of the problem you are solving, and never attack your rivals, because it just makes you look petty and defensive.
He gives the rule. Don't show the wrinkles you propose to remove, but the face as it will appear.
Because people already know they have wrinkles.
Right. They look in the mirror every morning. They don't need a brand to remind them how bad they feel about aging.
They want to see the sunshine. They want to see the aspirational solution.
It comes down to association, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. We are naturally attracted to beauty, happiness, health, and success. If you run a negative ad warning people of the dark consequences of not using your product, showing the disaster, the pain, the lugubrious blue,
You subconsciously associate your brand with those negative feelings.
Hopkins found through testing that if you run a negative, fear-based ad against a positive, aspirational ad inviting them to a brighter future, the positive ad will outpull the negative one 4-to-1.
Wow. 4-to-1. So the lesson is to stop with the doom-scrolling marketing. Frame your solutions around sunshine, success, and the desired end state.
Always show them the better version of themselves.
Okay, we have covered a massive amount of ground here today, from the 1920s to modern algorithms. Let's take a step back and really synthesize this. How do all these distinct ideas fit into a coherent worldview?
If you look at the entire journey Hopkins takes us on in scientific advertising, his underlying logic is the absolute ruthless elimination of waste.
Waste of both money and ego, really.
Exactly. He didn't just invent a few clever copywriting tricks. He essentially formalized the scientific method for the business world.
It is a very clear, sequential, logical process when you look at it from a high level. Let me try to break it down. First, you acknowledge that you cannot sell to everyone, so you filter for the exact right person using highly targeted headlines.
You actively ignore the crowd.
Second, once you have their attention, you approach them humbly with a risk-free offer of service. triggering reciprocity rather than demanding they take a risk on you.
Right. Third, you prove your value to them with undeniable, highly specific facts and numbers.
Abandoning the lazy platitudes that trigger their skepticism. Fourth, you tell them the full story, everything they need to make an informed decision.
Acting as a true salesman in print rather than an entertainer.
And finally, you submit your ego to the math. You track every single interaction. You run microtests on every campaign to ensure the thousands decide for the millions, and you aren't bleeding money on a bad guess.
He fundamentally believed that knowledge is only valuable when it is applied and relentlessly measured. He looked at business not as a casino where you pull a slot machine lever, launch a clever campaign, and pray for a jackpot.
He viewed business as a laboratory.
Exactly. You run controlled experiments, you learn from the data, you optimize the psychology, and then, only when the math is proven, do you scale what works.
Which begs the final question. Who is this book actually for today? Obviously, if you are a copywriter, a marketer, or an agency owner, this book is your Bible.
It is the foundational text of your profession, and you should probably reread it once a year, at least.
But I think its utility goes way beyond just the marketing department. It's for startup founders, sales professionals, and honestly, anyone who has to persuade people to take action for a living.
I would actually push that even further. Yeah. Even if you never sell a single product, never start a business, and never write an ad in your entire life, this deep dive is for you.
Because we are all consumers.
Because you are a consumer living in a heavily commercialized society. Understanding these principles is literally like seeing the green code falling in the matrix.
Oh, I love that. It fundamentally changes how you experience the world.
Once you understand how the law of reciprocity is being weaponized against you with a free sample in the grocery store,
or how specific numbers are being engineered to bypass your natural skepticism,
or how a headline was scientifically crafted to filter your specific demographic out of a crowd, you become an educated, critical thinker in a world of absolute information overload.
You start to spot exactly why certain products and political messages draw you in, and you become highly immune to cheap manipulation.
You stop falling for the clown in the $10,000 suit.
We've talked a lot today about advertising as multiplied salesmanship, but I want to leave you, the listener, with a final thought to mull over, applying this to your daily life.
Think about the interactions you have every single week.
Every time you sit down to ask your boss for a raise, or you try to convince a friend to go to a specific restaurant for dinner, or even when you just construct a post to share an opinion on social media.
You are essentially running a tiny personal ad campaign.
You are trying to persuade another human being to adopt your viewpoint or take an action. So ask yourself, in those moments, are you relying on the black art of guessing, putting on a performance, and hoping they just like you?
Or are you applying the science of service, deeply understanding their selfish needs, and using brutal specificity to make your case undeniable?
It's a very powerful framework for looking at almost every human interaction.
It really is. It changes how you communicate entirely.
Now listen, we have covered the major pillars today, and hopefully this gives you a completely new lens to view marketing and persuasion. But honestly, this overview only scratches the absolute surface of the brilliance packed into scientific advertising.
We barely touched on his strategies for letter writing or how to deal with retail distribution or the deep psychology of actually naming a product.
The depth of the historical examples alone, seeing exactly how he constructed these campaigns step by step, is incredibly valuable.
Absolutely.
So if you felt this book could genuinely help you, whether you are building a business, writing copy, or you just want to understand the psychology of human persuasion on a much deeper level, there is a complete audio available.
It is several hours long, covering every single chapter of Hopkins' book in deep detail.
With extensive explanations, more historical examples, and highly actionable takeaways for every single section. It is the natural next step to really mastering these timeless laws of human behavior.
I highly recommend checking it out.
So check the link in the description if you want to go deeper and grab that complete audio. Until next time, remember, keep your metrics specific, offer genuine service, let the thousands decide for the millions, and please, whatever you do, fire the clown.
What you just listened was the beginning of a full audio, way longer, explaining every single chapter of the book. If you would like to keep listening to the end and access to the full audio, you can access it with the link down below in the description and in the pinned comment.